Hello, I am Tulio Rodriguez, and the name of our topic today is called Timing the Markets in Trump Times, the Big Reset. I have split the presentation in 7 segments to accommodate them to your availability. You can watch them all together or by groups and come back later to watch the rest whenever you are available. Chapter 1, Money, Power, and Market Philosophy. Chapter 2, The Global Pyramid Scheme. Chapter 3, Liquidity, the true ruler of the market. Chapter 4, The China Factor and Global Trade Imbalances. Chapter 5, Bitcoin and the Next Monetary Reset. Chapter 6, Safe Havens and the Philosophy of the Man. Chapter 7, Who will rule the world the next 30 years? Let's get started with chapter 1, Money, Power, and Market Philosophy. Money controls the world. Of course it does. What do you think determines who gets elected as our political representatives? Do you know who they are, who the dominant elites are, who is behind the financial markets? All you have is people that is transmitting market information at high speed, a lot of emotions, something that is called market sentiment. Hence, the theory of contrarian opinions works very well. When the front cover of a financial newspaper arguing that cryptos will not go up, chances are that normally the opposite is not likely to happen. This is control as per 2 basic emotions, greed and fear. Greed is time to buy. Fear is time to sell. Thucydides, Machiavelli, Napoleon, Keynes used to say the same thing not too long time ago. Why President Trump imposed tariffs in all countries? To find the answer, you must simply follow the money. Whoever controls the public debt controls the government. My name is Tulio Rodriguez. I truly appreciate if you can take a few moments, give a like to the video and subscribe to the channel. This will help us a lot on our promotional strategy. The market is whatever those who truly command it want it to be. The questions are, who are those in command? What are the signs that bad things are coming? Chapter 2, the Global Pyramid Scheme. Currently, we're in Global Pyramid Scheme. It's a fraudulent business model. Revenue comes primarily from recruiting others instead of selling products or services. Government do not control public spending. The dollar, the euro, the yuan, the American bonds are not necessarily solid. Markets and news are a mirage of reality. When we see bombing in Iran, and then we find that the Israeli stock market is rising, the Standard & Poor's is not collapsing, the gold is not rising, the oil is not rising, then the conflict is not extending. Then we must look at gold and Bitcoin. We call them safe haven assets because they protect us from the fiscal irresponsibility of political leaders. In theory, they protect us from monetary inflation. Charts and graphics discount all the information available. On Saturday, after the start of the bombing in Israel, the probability that the world would be short-lived was high because the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange Index was historically high. If there was going to be a global conflagration, that could not happen, and the indexes would have plummeted. If governments are going to increase defense spending, and the aging population will skyrocket social spending, and politicians to stay in power need to buy votes, then there is not going to be any way politicians want to cut public spending. Do you see that Trump is approving a new law? He's going to cut taxes, but neither he nor Biden have managed to cut public spending. Right now, The United States public deficit is 7% of GDP. If you tell me right now that the United States has a public debt to GDP ratio of around 123%, with a public deficit of 7%, then the dollar and the American bonds would worth very little, if something, if anything. We are in a pyramid scheme. Fiat currencies such as the euro, the dollar, the yuan, the yen are also worth very little. There's nothing behind those currencies. It's just the faith that the citizens have in the paper. There are irresponsible politicians who makes the deficit bigger, and therefore the value of the purchasing power of the currency decreases. People are used to see price inflation. The inflation rate in the United States now is around 2%. But what isn't talked about is what we call monetary inflation, which is the loss of the value of the purchasing power of the money. The annual loss of the purchasing power of the money is around 8%. Inflation is estimated to be around 2%. That we can compensate for with salary increases, and 8% monetary inflation that we cannot compensate for. Then you must look at gold and Bitcoin because they are safe haven assets. They protect us from the fiscal irresponsibility of the politicians. They protect us from monetary inflation. The first thing a person must know every day is the gold price. First the gold and then the Bitcoin price. Because having euros, having dollars is playing the politician pyramid scheme. The market is the place where sellers and buyers converge and price is set, as Adam Smith would have said, the invisible hand. But it doesn't work like that. In the markets, there are strong hands, and those are the ones who manage the market. There are people who have privileged information obtained legitimately and obtained illegitimately. Chapter 3, Liquidity, the ruler of the markets. So if you tell me the important thing is to see the market, to understand what the market is the big banks of the world. Are you personally going to know more than Chase, more than BlackRock? So the market is the place where Goliath and Davids go. And there is only one way to defend yourself, and that's operating when the trend is very strong. Individual investors only have a few weapons at their service. The first one is knowing that the currency will constantly depreciate because politicians are in the middle. When you discover that politicians are in the middle, they are constantly depreciating the currency, then you know that gold and Bitcoin are going up. Then it's not about criticizing the politician. It's about how we position ourselves against the fiscal irresponsibility of the politicians. And how do we protect ourselves? Gold, Bitcoin, and large companies that are profitable, solid at any given time. That's how we can protect ourselves. The most dangerous asset right now is what everybody has: money, dollars, euros, yuans, yens. Because every year you lose 8% in monetary inflation. Who would be the person with the most power when it comes to changing the market? That is a power that only 3 people have worldwide. And let me give you some hints. Who has Donald Trump insulted the most? Who Donald Trump calls stupid? Have you heard Donald Trump calling anybody else stupid? He's only called stupid to the president of the Federal Reserve. Why? Because he knows he is the only one with the power to derail economic plans. They have power because they manage liquidity. who manage liquidity are those who have the power. Look at China. Why is Trump so angry with Powell? Because Xi Jinping controls the Chinese central bank. However, Donald Trump does not control the central bank. At least for now, he doesn't. The most important thing in the world is liquidity. Whoever controls liquidity governs the world. Listen to me, governs the world. If we inject liquidity into the system, the price of the asset will go up. Liquidity makes gold, Bitcoin, and stock go up. But if they withdraw the liquidity from the system, the opposite happens. What Donald Trump wants? He wants the Federal Reserve System to buy his public debt because Trump is a politician. Trump doesn't control public spending. If you don't control public spending, what Donald Trump wants, what Donald Trump needs is someone to buy his public debt. And the only one who can buy the public debt is Powell. If Powell buys the public debt, he injects liquidity into the system because he prints money out of thin air. The economy grows, inflation, stocks, gold, and Bitcoin go up. Then Powell terms ends in May 2026. Trump is going to appoint some acolyte. Can you imagine that Donald Trump will control the Federal Reserve System by May 2026? Can you imagine the implications? Let's make a simple prediction. From May 2026, if Donald Trump controls the Federal Reserve, the stock market will go where? Up. Liquidity is king. Whoever you are, whatever you are, you need to control your own liquidity. Liquidity governs the world. Look at who controls liquidity. What's wrong with Russia? Russia doesn't control liquidity. They only sell oil. The sanctions that Europe has imposed on Russia have not made a dent into their income. They've received it from oil sales. If Donald Trump controls the Fed, he will be the liquidity master. The other one is Xi Jinping, who already controls the Central Bank of China. However, it's weaker because of limited domestic demand and the problem of China, which is the aging of its population. Then we have the European Union in third place. But the European Union is in a very bad shape anyway. It's broken in all aspects. To be a competitive player in a modern world, you need different things. And Europe don't have it. India is going to become the world main consumer. If India is going to become the most populous country on the planet, it's going to surpass China. And I think it's going to be also a large consumer of natural resources. Now, let's only look at the two major creators of liquidity. Who they are? The Federal Reserves and the Chinese Central Bank. Chapter 4, the China factor and the global trade imbalances. If you go to China, the Central Bank of China is injecting liquidity. Recently, they put $50 billion, and 2 weeks ago, they put another $100 billion. Bitcoin, gold, and the stock market will go up. China has a trade surplus, and Trump wants to economically curb China. Why? Because China is winning local markets worldwide. China has a production capacity that does not meet its domestic demand, that is clearly superior to its domestic needs. The Chinese government is using subsidies to allow Chinese industry to grow, to be very efficient and technologically advanced. Since the rest of the world is not subsidizing our companies or achieving that technological progress, then China is colonizing the markets and our companies tend to what? To disappear. We must defend ourselves against China because Xi Jinping has an export-oriented economy. China declares a trade surplus of $450 billion, which is false. It is manipulated downward. It is devaluated. So what people don't realize is that what China is really doing. China trade surplus is not 450, it's $600 billion. And nobody asks where the $600 billion goes. Therefore, China must be curbed, since all the industrial facilities of the world will be destroyed by China. If China has $600 billion and the Chinese central bank injects liquidity into the system, then the stock market has to go up. We should look at liquidity, not at what the media says. If you take the covers published by the financial newspapers or magazine, they say that Donald Trump is doing in the economy is an experiment, that the world economy is going to mess things up, that the markets are going through a dangerous moment, and that bitcoins and cryptocurrencies are bogged down. Well, these headlines means that the journalists at these newspapers want to scare us, or at least if they are not doing it maliciously, they are thinking about it. And what did we say markets are guided by? I told you, by sentiment. What is a journalist and its newspaper editor? Well, that's the ultimate expression of the reader's sentiment. So the newspaper editor of a business magazine is telling me, by publishing this type of article on the cover, is that there is a terrible fear, concern in the market. If I am afraid of the market and I apply the theory of contrarian opinion, liquidity is increasing. What will the market do in 2026? It will go up. You don't invest in a communist country, because the moment a dictator arrives, he cuts you off. So the only place left to invest the trade surplus you have is to invest in the United States. And what do they buy? They buy American bonds. But of course, you cannot say that the Chinese central bank buys American bonds, because if not, your communist narrative does not work. How do you do it? You hide it through state-owned Chinese banks. That's what you do. Chapter 5. Gold, Bitcoin, and the next monetary reset. What happens is that the Chinese channel funnel their money through the United Kingdom so they do not get caught. If you had $600 billion besides buying American bonds, what else would you buy? Obviously, you would buy gold. Who are the ones buying gold? The Central Bank of China. But since they are Chinese and lie, it must declare the gold purchases they make. What they do is they falsify them. They buy from the Shanghai Stock Exchange. They also buy from the London Stock Exchange, and secretly, and they do not include the figures in the data they provide to the International Monetary Fund. In London, the gold market is a secret market, in such a way that we don't have information. You remember when Donald Trump and Musk came to power and they said that they were going to do audits all over the world, all over the US economy, and so on. Why they didn't do it? Why they didn't have the courage to do an audit at Fort Knox to see the gold the United States has? The conclusion is simple: because there isn't that much gold. Because the gold at the central bank is lent, exchanged. Swaps are made for many years, and they really don't know right now. If you were going there, you would not find the gold. In 1944, at Bretton Woods, the financial system was designed in which currencies were backed by gold. Then there was a certain moment, specifically in the 60s, in the 70s, in which banknotes were no longer backed by gold. Nixon times. At that time, when currencies were backed by gold, do you know how many tons central banks had, tons of gold? 38,000. Then the nominal elites in the 70s and in the 60s, advised by Milton Friedman, came along and said, from now on, currencies will not be backed by gold. This has a very important advantage because allow politicians to be Keynesians, and they impose the Keynesian narrative on all economies. What this means in plain language is that Keynes is an accomplice of politicians, because Keynes says that in times of crisis, public spending could be increased without any budgetary limitations. When we are on a gold standard, we couldn't do it. So by removing the gold standard, you find you can print all the money you want and spend all you want. After the 70s, the gold standard was abandoned. And now, with the passage of time, we have found that at that time, we had 30,000 tons of gold. Central bank now have 36,000 tons. Now they're buying gold again. As if we were going back to the gold standard, China and Asian countries are buying gold as if there is no tomorrow. Why is this? We are going to a new gold standard because this is unsustainable? Perhaps. Is this the Great Reset? The US public deficit is growing at 7%, as I've told you before. They are going to cut taxes, increase defense spending, social spending is skyrocketing, as I said before. And on top of that, politicians must keep spending. They must keep spending to buy goodwill, to be able to buy votes. So public spending is not going to decrease. Donald Trump will have influence over the head of the Federal Reserve, the most powerful bank in the world, and is injecting liquidity into the system. China is also injecting liquidity into the system because domestic demand is collapsing. If the two major creators of liquidity are injected into the system and the European Central Bank is buying Italian, Spanish, Greek, and French public debt, this means that this is unsustainable. Nobody is going to pay the public debt. Then at a certain point, a politician will come and say, let's start over. This is the big reset, in brackets. I promise you now, we are going to be good. And I promise that if you behave and forgive the public debt, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be fiscally responsible. I'm going to be a good politician. That would be the Great Reset. And until then, what is gold going to do? Well, you know, people are looking for gold, for cryptocurrencies as a safe haven. Why didn't Democrats in the United States want Bitcoin? Why didn't Trump want Bitcoin in his first term? Because Bitcoin is a clear demonstration of the failure of the financial system. Central bankers hate Bitcoin and gold. Until now, central bankers preventing the price of gold from rising. The problem we have with Bitcoin is that all institutions are buying it to defend themselves against monetary policy. Do you know who also is buying Bitcoin? Let's go to the chapter 6. Safe havens and the psychology of the man. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, he is the one also buying Bitcoins. He has a company where his son is the president, and he has issued $2.5 billion in shares. And what do you think they're going to do with that money? They're going to buy Bitcoin. And he's not hiding it. He's not hiding the fact that he's buying Bitcoin. Do you know why? Because they know we are going to a system reset, and Bitcoin, gold, and profitable, solid companies will be the safe haven assets. The good thing about it is that the supply of gold doesn't grow. Why some like Bitcoin? Because Bitcoin has a certain number. It's going to reach 21 billion and 21 million, and it's going to stop. People do buy Bitcoin and profitable solvent companies and art paintings and are very curious that is happening right now, especially for economic students. This is what I'm going to tell you is very good. When you study economics, you know that demand for a good decreases when price increases. Well, we are finding that with gold, the demand for gold increases when the price goes up. Funny, no? Now we're realizing that central bankers are doing the opposite. Central bankers are selling when the dollar has fallen. The dollar has fallen 8% this year, and they are selling. So they are registering what? Heavy losses. But they have heavy losses in two ways. One, due to the 8% fall in the dollar so far that has happened this year, and another due to the fall in the price of the bond as yield increases. So the central bankers are losing money. Do you hear any media outlet mentioning this? You don't. And they are also selling it at a loss in the sales they make due to the dollar component. The question I want to ask is, the one we all must ask to ourselves, which is why they have changed their behavior. Why do they need that money? Why are they doing it? The conclusion I reach is simple, that they are buying gold. You see, all the roads lead to liquidity and gold. Well, everyone else is talking about a major crisis. I'm going to ask you a question. Everyone talks about a major crisis and so on. I'm going to tell you something. As long as liquidity increases, I don't see any crisis. If liquidity begins to fade, then it's different. When you see liquidity contracting, the crisis will begin. But if there is liquidity, do not worry, there is no crisis. In the year 2026, if we are seeing projections of liquidity, and most important, if in front of the Fed we have an acolyte, liquidity will arrive. Let's go to the final chapter, chapter 7. Who will rule the world in the next 30 years? Listen to this. Discipline and authoritarianism will be critical on the results. Europe. Now, they do not have the spirit, nor the wealth, neither the youth to be a champion in this competition. China will continue to expand, exporting its excess capacity, and will continue to reinforce its place as the factory of the world. Why? Fighting the headwinds, which is their biggest problem, of its population aging. India will become the most populated country in the world, with lots of young people and growing. It will have a geopolitical alignment with the West against China. The United States, for sure, will be in the fight. However, the sense of direction and unity, as well as the nature of its new social fabric, now in transformation, will be the decisive factors. Artificial intelligence will define the new meaning of wealth and the new global order. For the time being, the United States and China are the clear leaders. While we navigate the process of the next 30 years, please do not forget gold, Bitcoin, and the new modern times blue chips. I am Tulio Rodriguez. See you next time.